Hello. Thank you. Got it.
Good evening, Luang Por, and greetings everyone. We'll now start the session with the opening homage. Let's all chant together. Araham Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Buddhang Bhagavantang Abhivati Sawakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasa Supatipano Bhagavato Sangha Sangho Sanghang Namah.
So it's my turn, right? Hello, everyone. Before we start this session, I thought I'd explain some of the elements of what Bita has organized. So last time I spoke to Bita, she wanted to do one of the traditional ceremonies that we have in Theravada Buddhism, and a lot of you probably don't understand the historical context of it. So maybe I could explain some of the words and some of the ideas that this is based on. So first of all, there's the word vassa, and vassa is the rains retreat that the monks in most Buddhist traditions observe, and the rains correspond to the monsoon in India, which runs from the full moon of July, and the retreat runs for 3 months, full moon of July to full moon of October. So that covers 3 months, and it's a time where the monks were asked not to wander, because there was both a wandering tradition in the beginning, but then the more stable monastic tradition started to arise. And one of the reasons it arose was that during the rainy season, during the monsoon, it's very difficult for monks to live outside and travel and so on. So the Buddha asked the monks to stay in one residence for 3 months during the first 3 months of the monsoon season. And this is called the Vassa residence, or the rains residence. And in Theravada monasteries, all monks are doing this, whether it's Sri Lanka, Thailand, North America, India, Burma, Cambodia, and I think the Chinese traditions probably observe that too, but I'm not sure. I'm kind of familiar with Theravada. So during the Vassa, during the rains retreat, monks can leave the monastery for short periods to go visit other monks, to teach, or to visit a lay person who might be ill, needs teaching, but basically they try to stay in the monastery. So we've been here, our community's been here for the 3 months, and the Vassa ends in the next full moon, which is soon. And so that's one word, Vassa. Now at the end of Vassa, at the end of the rains retreat, the monks gather together and they have a ceremony called Pavarana. And Pavarana is invitation. And in this sense, it's an invitation that each member of the community makes to all other members of the community that's lived together now to offer any advice or admonishment or suggestion for anything that the individual might have done which is inappropriate, wrong according to the etiquette of a monk, wrong according to Dharma. So it's an invitation to admonishment. And in that, there's also an asking for forgiveness. So if I've done anything which has offended you, please forgive me. And the counter statement is, yes, in my turn too, if I've ever done anything to offend you, please forgive me. And that's the forgiveness ceremony that we will be doing soon there. So that's where it's coming from. Now, Bita has done nothing wrong. So it's not like she's been bad and now she's asking for forgiveness. It's not that. Actually, she's a paragon of goodness. So there's no problem that way. So it's very ceremonial that way, but it is very beautiful when like all the monks come together, and then we each individually say this invitation to admonishment or criticism, and we say it in the Pali form. So it's very formulaic. And we don't then sit down and have an argument, tell each other what we did to each other. It's not that. It's not like a confrontation or some kind of heart meeting where you work your issues out. It's not that. It's very formalized, and it's about an intention of the heart that is, its basis is humility and community. That's what we're doing. We're trying to always create community. Community is very hard to sustain. And one of the things that happens is, like in any relationship, marriage, community, misunderstandings happen. And if they're not addressed and allowed to be known, they can fester or they can be held in unfortunate ways. So that's what the forgiveness part is. Right? So Bita, you're okay. No problem. So that's that part. Then the offering of the cloth. Now, if you go back 2,600 years, right, and the time of the Buddha, or even if you go to India now, in the time of the Buddha, cloth was hard to get, and the monks, although their requisites are very minimal, they only had their simple robes, and it was a hot climate. They didn't need much. They still needed robe cloth. And one of the ways they got robe cloth was in burning grounds, crematoriums, which were open. I guess that's what a charnel ground is, right? Charnel ground. And as you've seen, if you've been to Benares and you've seen the burning ghats in India, so the cremations are open cremations. In our monastery in Thailand, Wat Nanachat, we have an open crematorium where villagers bring a person's body that's died from the village, and the whole village and all the monks observe the cremation as a kind of meditation on death. And I was just talking to Venerable Amasiri, and it seems that in India, even now, that when a corpse is brought to the burning ghats, the corpse is covered in two shrouds, two pieces of cloth. And the first shroud is removed as the body is brought closer to the funeral pyre at sort of gates of the place, and that's cast off onto the ground. And then any sadhus or beggars or whoever who need the cloth can take that cloth, and that's called bangsakula. That's the word in the Pali. And bangsakula cloth is then things have been cast away. It can be other things too. And monks could take that. Monks can't ask for robe cloth. I can't go to the neighbor and say, have you got an extra robe? Because they wouldn't have one. That's a problem too. But I can't just ask for cloth. I have to wait for it. But I can pick up cloth that's been discarded. And it's obviously not a problem here because we monks nowadays are very wealthy, actually, in a kind of basic sense. We don't really need much because lay people are so generous. But that's the spirit of it, cast off cloth. And also, I was talking to Amasiri, he said that he's from South India. In South India, the famous monastery in Tiruvannamalai, Sri Ramana's ashram, there, and there's a mountain there called Arunachala. A lot of sadhus live there, all kinds of sadhus of different make and tradition, that lay people will go and put pieces of cloth in the forest there or on the ground, and the sadhus can pick it up and use that for their own robes. So there's the idea of cloth being left and available to sadhus or being cast off at a crematorium. So this cloth, and there's a ceremony in Thailand which they call Tot Papa. It's the ceremony of forest cloth, I think is the literal translation. And that's what we're doing. We're having this ceremony of forest cloth, and that's where it's coming from. It's interesting, 2,600 years ago, this was going on in a very real way. And now Bita thought, well, let's do that. Let's do this ceremony. And so it's very formalized, but the spirit of it is that the monks, this relationship that the monks have with the laity of that we're dependent on the laity's generosity and goodness, and that, cast off cloth is fine. I don't need to have the finest Benares silks and brocades for my robe. In fact, I wouldn't want it because I'd look weird. I look weird already. So then you have the final word you need to think about is the word Katina. So Katina is a ceremony that can take place after the Vasa in the fourth month of that monsoon season. So the monsoon season lasts 4 months. The first 3 are the rains retreat for the monks. And then the last month, if you think about it in the time of the Buddha, I guess the rainy season was winding down. The chance to now move about and walk about the countryside as monks was more possible. And so the monks needed requisites. They needed robes, and they needed to make maybe shoulder bags or whatever they needed. And so and also if it was the monsoon, I've lived in Thailand during the monsoon, the robe material can rot very easily because it's so damp. Sometimes it's so damp you can't dry the cloth out. At Wat Pah Pong, I used to put my robe on the concrete floors of the meditation halls because the concrete is hydroscopic. Is that word? It absorbs moisture, so the stitching can rot and so on. So the lay people then were allowed to create a ceremony called a Katina Ceremony, and the way that works is one of the representatives from a group of lay people would go to the monastery and ask the Sangha, may we offer the Katina robe this season? And it would be something of great honor, like a whole village might be involved. And the Katina robe would then be cloth that was first of all offered on that day by that lay group, and other people could participate too. So they'd bring other things. They'd bring like oil for the lamps or all kinds of things that they needed then. Nowadays, people would bring tea towels or soap or razors, all the things that a monastery might need. And so it's kind of like Christmas harvest festival. It's really very, very fun. And lay people are so generous. So it was this lovely kind of coming together. The monks have been practicing hard for the Vasa. Now they're about to wander. We can give them the requisites. Let's do that. And the way that ceremony works, the Katina ceremony, so the lay people come in the morning, they offer requisites, and they offer some white. Here, this is how we do it, and most Wat Pah Pong monasteries do. The lay people offer white cloth after the meal. They offer the meal, the white cloth. Then the monks go and take that cloth, and they sew up one robe for one monk who has spent that vasa together. And they do it communally. So each monk will try to sew a bit of the robe, and they'll also dye it. And that has to be done by the dawn of the following day. So if the monks are good sewers, it gets done by 7 p.m. Here it gets done by 2 a.m. We're a bit slow sometimes, but it does get done. And then the community chooses one of the monks to be the recipient of the Katina robe, which is also a great honor. So this is a very honorable and much very meritorious kind of tradition, ceremony that has become very popular in Theravada Buddhism. Now, we have a Katina here on, I think it's the 23rd of October?
31st.
31st, yeah, close enough. On the 31st of October, and the invitee, the persons who have invited us to the Katina are the Thai ambassador to Canada and his colleagues, staff in Ottawa. And we were thinking we were going to have a ceremony, but the whole COVID thing makes things so complicated that we'll have a very small ceremony, and only the ambassador staff will be here. And then other people, we hope they could come in groups either side of that day, which we did last time. So it's unfortunate because Katina is a lovely time to come together. Usually for us, we have a small community, so we get 200 people would come, which for us is a lot. For Wat Pong, it would be 3,000 or 4,000. For Abhayagiri, they'd have 500. So it's kind of a Christmassy kind of feel to it. We all come together. But that obviously folk from Singapore or wherever can't come for that. And so this is a way of doing the same thing as well. And this is a Zoom. This might be one of the first Zoom papas. Zoom papa. It sounds like a German music band, doesn't it? Zoom papa. I think that's the first time. Maybe someone else has done that. Let me see. I think that was Bangsakula Vasa Pavarana, which is forgiveness, Katina and Papa. I think those are the elements that we need to remember. Okay, Bita, or Shunxian, we'll back to you.
Yes, we will now like to request everyone to formally seek for forgiveness from Luang Por and the Sangha. So please let us all join in this requesting for forgiveness ceremony together.
You're okay. Yeah, you're right.
Please be Nanjali. Let's pay our respects by bowing 3 times together. Bow.
We do this at the end of Vasa, the whole community. Everyone joins in.
Let's start by chanting Namo Tassa 3 times together. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Please bow and keep our heads lowered for the rest of the chant. Sankhe Pamadena Tawaratayena Katang Sabang Aparadang Kamatuno Bante. Sankhe Pamadena Tawaratayena Katang Sabang Aparadang Kamatuno Bante. Sankhe Pamadena Tawaratayena Katang Sabang Aparadang Kamatuno Bante.
Aham kamami tumhe hipime kimitapang.
Kamama Bante.
Vatu Sava Mangalang Rakantu Sava Devata Sava Buddha Sava Dhamma Sava Sankha Nubhavena Sadasoti Bhavanti Te.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Let's bow 3 times together. First bow. Second bow. Third bow. Okay, we'll now offer the forest cloth. So please chant together as well. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Sama Sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Imani Mayam Bante Pansukula Chivarani Saparivarani Bhikkhu Sankasa Ono Jayama Sadhu no Bante Bhikkhu Sankho Imani Pansukula Chivarani Saparivarani Patikanhatu Amhakang Tigaratang Hitaya Sukaya.
Venerable Sirs, we present these cast-off cloths of ours, together with the accompanying articles, to the Bhikkhu Sangha. May the Bhikkhu Sangha accept these cast-off cloths of ours, together with the accompanying articles, for our long-term welfare and happiness.
Sadhu.
We now request the 3 refuges and 5 precepts. Mayam Bante Tisarane Nasaha Pancha Sila Niyachama Tudiyampi Mayam Bante Tisarane Nasaha Pancha Sila Niyachama Tatiyampi Mayam Bante Tisarane Nasaha Pancha Sila Niyachama.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa.
Buddhang saranang gacchami.
Buddhang saranang gacchami.
Dhammang saranang gacchami.
Dhammang saranang gacchami.
Sanghang saranang gacchami.
Sanghang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi Bhutang Saranang Gacchami.
Tutiyampi Buddhang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi Dhammang Saranang Gacchami.
Tutiyampi Dhammang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi Sanghang Saranang Gacchami.
Tutiyampi Sanghang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi Bhutang Saranang Gacchami.
Tatiyampi Buddhang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi Dhammang Saranang Gacchami.
Tatiyampi Dhammang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi Sanghang Saranang Gacchami.
Tatiyampi Sanghang saranang gacchami.
Tisarana Gamanang Nikitang.
Amabante.
Panatipata Veramani Sikapadang Samatiyami.
Panatipata Viramani Sikapadang Samadhiyami.
I undertake the precept to refrain from taking the life of any living creature.
I undertake the precept to refrain from taking the life of any living creature.
Adina dana veramani sikapadang samadhiyami.
Adina dana veramani sikapadang samadhiyami.
I undertake the precept to refrain from taking that which is not given.
I undertake the precept to refrain from taking that which is not given.
Kame sumicha chara veramani sikapadang samadhiyami.
Kame sumicha chara veramani sikapadang samadhiyami.
I undertake the precept to refrain from sexual misconduct.
I undertake the precept to refrain from sexual misconduct.
Musawada veramani sikapadang samadhiyami.
Musawada veramani sikapadang samadhiyami.
I undertake the precept to refrain from lying.
I undertake the precept to refrain from lying.
Surameraya majapamadhatana veramani sikapadang samadhiyami.
Sura meraya majapamadhatana veramani sikapadang samadhiyami.
I undertake the precept to refrain from consuming intoxicating drink and drugs which lead to carelessness.
I undertake the precept to refrain from consuming intoxicating drink and drugs which lead to carelessness.
Imani panchasikapadani silena sukatinyanti silena bhogasampata silena niputinyanti tasama silang visotaye.
Sadhu. Thank you, Luang Por. Let's all pay our respects by bowing 3 times together. Bow.
So, the thing about ritual, this kind of ritual, it's not efficient. Like, why do we have to do Namo Tassa 3 or 4 times? I mean, we did it once. Why do we have to do it 3 times? Because it's not about efficiency or getting it done as quick as possible, right? It's about ritual. And when you do ritual a lot with a good heart, then ritual brings you to a sense of order and meaning in a kind of emotional way, I would say. Yeah, this is correct. This is direction, because it's a crazy, crazy world. So if you just read about global warming and all the rest of the stuff that goes on in the media, and you read all that all the time, you'd be pretty upset, and a lot of people are. And where's the order and where's the meaning of it all? But if you pick up these rituals and see that they're not about, like, how many times do you have to bow, right? Like, can't we just bow once? Why do we have to do it so many times? It's not about efficiency. It's not irrational, but it's not like the best way to do it. It's doing it for the sake of doing it. And then I think in the doing, if you do it as a tradition for years and years and years, and you take the meaning on board, just the doing of it helps your meditation, helps your heart, helps your sense of well-being in a confused world. That's the idea. Because I was looking at how many times we did Namo Tassa there. It was pretty good. Hey, Shunzin, you did it 4 times. So we're not going to kind of get it down to a nice Western style, nice and efficient. But that's not the point of it. It has deeper meaning. So let's do some meditation. We'll just do a short one, maybe like 20 minutes or so. I won't give much instruction, just enough, I think. Okay. Listen to sound. And let the sounds come to you. Welcoming awareness, welcoming attention. Notice the stillness of being, the stillness of being, the stillness of awareness. Listen to sound. Feel the sensations in your face, mouth, ears, nose, eyes. Let the sensations in the face become conscious. Let it come to you. Notice the stillness of awareness. Become conscious of the breathing of the body. Receptive awareness. And notice the stillness of awareness, the silence of awareness. So breath by breath, be the silence of awareness. Be that silence of awareness.
Luang Por will now request for Dharma talk. Pama Chaloka Dipati Sahapati Katanjaliya Divarangaya Chata Santi Dasata Paraja Kajatika Dese Dhamma Anugampi Mampaja.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. Hello everyone. Nice to be with you again. I was in Ottawa doing a retreat recently, which was lovely. First in-person retreat for 2 years. And we live streamed it as well. So that was actually much easier than a kind of Zoom retreat where we have live people here. They seem to be alive. They're alive, you're alive, you're alive. Okay, we're good. We have a few here. So that does help. But anyway, it's very beautiful in the monastery right now. This is autumn is, for many Canadians, it's the favorite season. The weather is not too hot, not too cold. The nights are cool, like 9 degrees. The day today was 22, 23. And the colors are spectacular. The basswoods and the maple trees and the oak trees and the hickory and all these beautiful hardwoods of Ontario change colors to gold and brown and yellow and red. And the autumn sun has got a certain kind of diffusion in it, which is not too harsh. So it's really very, very lovely, lovely. So hopefully someday you can visit. And that's the month, September, October, that's the best month. I've been thinking about paths, and obviously the most important path is the Noble Eightfold Path. But I came across a sutta which I was trying to remember where it was. So I'm going to read from that first. This is the Nagara Sutta, not the Niagara Sutta. No, we have Niagara Falls near here, but this is not that. Nagara Sutta, the city. It is just as if a man traveling along a wilderness track were to see an ancient path, an ancient road, traveled by people of former times. He would follow it. Following it, he would see an ancient city, an ancient capital inhabited by people of former times, complete with parks, groves, and ponds, walled, delightful. He would go to address the king or the king's minister, saying, "Sire, you should know that while traveling along a wilderness track, I saw an ancient path. I followed it. I saw an ancient city, an ancient capital, complete with parks, groves, and ponds, walled and delightful. Sire, rebuild that city." The king or king's minister would rebuild the city so that at a later date, the city would become powerful, rich, and well populated, fully grown, and prosperous. In the same way, I saw an ancient path, an ancient road traveled by the rightly self-awakened ones of former times. And what is that ancient path, that ancient road traveled by the rightly self-awakened ones of former times? Just this Noble Eightfold Path. Right view, right aspiration, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right meditation, right mindfulness, right concentration. That is the ancient path, the ancient road, traveled by the rightly self-awakened ones of former times. I followed that path. Following it, I came to direct knowledge of aging and death, direct knowledge of the origination of aging and death, direct knowledge of the cessation of aging and death, direct knowledge of the path leading to the cessation of aging and death. I followed that path. Knowing that directly, I have revealed it to monks, nuns, male lay followers, female lay followers, so that this holy life has become powerful, rich, detailed, well-populated, widespread, proclaimed amongst celestial and human beings. So we inherit the Buddha's insights and wisdom and hard work, and we develop the path ourselves. And this is the genius of the Buddha, that this is applicable in a modern urban environment like Singapore, or a country environment like Perth, Ontario, or Perth, Australia. And it can be practiced by Malaysian friends or Kiwis or Canadians, or men or women, or young or old, or dark skin or light skin. It's a universal teaching, because it's not a teaching which is about belief. It's a teaching about understanding your own mind, really. So if you think about how you develop a path, think about cooking. Think about when you couldn't cook, your mom or your dad or someone in the family put the food on the table and you ate it. You liked it or disliked it. You finished it or you didn't finish it. But it was just an experience. The experience of it's a mode of consumption. You consume the meal. And you were grateful or you weren't grateful, depending on the sauce or how much ice cream you got or whatever it might be. And then you wanted to, your mom or someone taught you how to boil an egg. And then you boiled it for 10 minutes and it became a squash ball or whatever. And anyway, you learned for some reason, in some ways, how to cut food, how to choose food, how to cook food, how to boil food, how to bake things, how to use flour, how to use salt, how to use spices. And each iteration of that, each doing of that became your path for cooking, right? So it's a doing, isn't it? It's a doing. And then maybe you realize, well, I have to buy the food too. I can't just go and steal the neighbor's vegetables. I have to go get the food. So then you develop skills to get yourself a bit of hard cash. And because you have hard cash, you have the skills which are negotiable in society. You have the resources that you could go to a restaurant if you can't cook. And that's all part of the path of having a meal. But it's no longer just consuming it. It's also developing ways to be able to repeat that again and again. You can, if you have the skills of cooking, you can do that. You have confidence. If you have a limited, if your larder is limited, like people interested in coming to the monastery say, could you make a meal for the Sangha from what's in the larder? And obviously people who are experienced, they say, yeah, I can do that. What you got? And they look around and they make a meal. So it's a pathway for generosity, isn't it? You develop a pathway to serve and to help and to give. And how does a path get developed? Developed by doing. You just do it. You overboil the egg or the milk. You overboil the milk in it, or you try to make bread and it doesn't rise, or you put too much salt in, or the rice comes out like paste, or whatever you do, but you just keep doing it and you keep doing it, you keep doing it, and you do get better if you pay attention. We can all do that. Or say, like now, I've been doing woodworking for 4 or 5 years, and now I can make little things, and it's very rewarding. And and so that's a pathway. I have a pathway now. If I see something in a book which I'd like to reproduce, or something the monastery might need, if it's not too complicated, I've got a pathway to do that. And there's a confidence there. And that confidence isn't arrogance. It's just, no, you do this, and then you do that, and you do this, and you do that, and then you're careful, and voila, you have a product. It's very, very straightforward. It's not magical. And all of us have that. All of us have skills, right? Most, probably on this Zoom could cook. I can't cook. Fortunately, you can cook, or someone cooks. You don't cook. You guys cook. Someone cooks. Anyway, I don't cook, but people take care of me. So I do the woodwork, or I talk on Zoom, or whatever the exchange is. So that's the path, and the pragmatism of it is very, very important. That it's not something mysterious, and it's not like becoming. You don't become a good cook, do you? You do it, and then at some point, good cooking takes place. So you could say, "I became a good cook," but it's not. It's never in the future. It's always in the present moment, isn't it? The boiling of the egg, or the tasting of the spices, or the purchase of the vegetables. It's always in the present moment. And if you watch and you observe and you look at cause and effect, you get better at it. If you don't look at cause and effect, well, no one's going to want to eat your food, that's for sure. And we have that capacity. We have the capacity to be aware, but we have the capacity to be aware in time. And that's why we're moral beings. I think that was the coyotes, was it? The coyotes are howling, just as I said, we are moral beings. I don't think they are, because they're from a different realm. They're from the realm of survival. They live by their principles, which are survival and procreation. And they sound pretty scary sometimes. But we have the capacity to, we are, we have this interesting capacity to look at other species and destroy them and eat them, but also to look at them in a way of compassion. So we are moral beings because we can see the cause, we can see our actions, and we can see the results of our actions in time. I can see how when I act towards others in a kind way, the result is a good result. When I act in a divisive way, it's a bad result. And that's how you develop the path. You develop the path through development of observing cause and effect. And one of the most important things that the Buddha said about this spiritual life of ours, this holy life of ours, this aspiration to transcendence that we all have, to peace, that it very much depends on good friendships. He really emphasized that. And it wasn't like a minor thing. It wasn't like you have a good mate that you go to the movies with. Much, much more profound than that. So I thought I'd just read from the Sigalovada Sutta, which I read on the Ottawa retreat. But it's the Sigalovada Sutta is the discourse to Sigala, and it's sometimes known as the layperson's code of discipline. As monks, we have what we call the Vinaya, and the Vinaya is the code, monastic code, which describes for us the proper way to live as a monk, both in terms of human relationships, of using requisites, of doing rituals, legal processes, so many other things. And that could never be codified for lay people in the same way, because lay folk live different lives. You live different lives in different cultures, so that could never be codified in the same way. Say in the Islamic tradition, it's codified through Sharia law, right? And then in the Judaic tradition, it's the Talmudic, right? So they have much more detailed description for the lay people. In Buddhism, the descriptions were more general. And the Sigalovada Sutta has a lot in it, but the description on friendships is very, very beautiful. So I thought it might be interesting to read this. These 4 young householders should be understood as foes in the guise of friends. 1, he who appropriates a friend's possessions, he who renders lip service, he who flatters, he who brings ruin. In 4 ways, young householders, should one who appropriates be understood as a foe in the guise of a friend. 1, he appropriates his friend's wealth. He gives little and asks much. He does his duty out of fear. He associates for his own advantage. In 4 ways, young householders should: 1, who renders lip service be understood as a foe in the guise of a friend. 1, he makes friendly profession as regards the past. 2, he makes friendly profession as regards the future. 3, he tries to gain one's favor by empty words. 4, when opportunity for service has arisen, he expresses his inability. I'm busy. 3, in 4 ways, young householder should: 1, who flatters be understood as a foe in the guise of a friend. 1, he approves of his friend's evil deeds. 2, he disapproves his friend's good deeds. 3, he praises him in his presence. And 4, he speaks ill of him in his absence. In 4 ways, young householders should: 1, who brings ruin be understood as a foe in the guise of a friend. He is a companion in indulging in intoxicants that cause infatuation and heedlessness. He is a companion in sauntering in streets at unseemly hours. And here's one for the theater goers. He is a companion in frequenting theatrical shows. So that means you can't go to the movies? What? What's that? I don't think it's that harsh. I think theatrical shows was a probably pretty debauched affair in those days. I'm not sure. I wasn't there. He is a companion indulging in gambling, which causes heedlessness. Thus spoke the Exalted One, and when the Master had thus spoken, he spoke yet again. The friend who appropriates, the friend who renders lip service, the friend that flatters, the friend who brings ruin, these 4, as enemies, the wise behold. Avoid them from afar as paths of peril. Can you hear the coyotes? No? They're going nuts out there. They're just screeching. You'll be afraid to go back to your kutsi. Okay, carry on. These 4 young householders should be understood as warm-hearted friends. He who is a helpmate. He who is the same in happiness and sorrow. He who gives good counsel. He who sympathizes. And of course, we could substitute she for all of these, but such are the texts that they're written in this way. In 4 ways, young householders should a helpmate be understood as a warm-hearted friend. 1, he guards the heedless. 2, he protects the wealth of the heedless. 3, he becomes a refuge when you are in danger. 4, when there are commitments, he provides you with double the supply needed. So if you ask for $10, he gives you 20. Right? In 4 ways, young householder should: 1 who is the same in happiness and sorrow be understood as a warm-hearted friend. 1, he reveals his secrets. 2, he conceals one's own secrets. 3, in misfortune, he does not forsake one. And 4, his life even he sacrifices for one's sake. And that revealing his secrets is very important in friendship. If a friendship is one where I tell to someone my faults and my difficulties and so on, he just listens and he listens, but he never reveals any of his own inner workings, you don't really know him. And if you don't know him, you don't really know him as a friend. There's something about that. I've often thought about that, how some people they won't tell you their inner secrets. And there's something one-sided about that. If life is a true friendship, I'll say to you, boy, I had a hard time. God, I really don't like that person. And the other person will say, I had the same thing. And there's something very honest about that and endearing, rather than a posture of, well, I don't have any problems. There's nothing going on inside. In 4 ways, young householders, should one who gives good counsel be understood as a warm-hearted friend. 1, he restrains one from doing evil. 2, he encourages one to do good. 3, he informs one of what is unknown to oneself. 4, he points out the path to heaven. So that's like one's blind spots. If you have a good friend and you've got a blind spot, some aspect of your character or something in your relationships, and the friend has the courage to say, you know what, you're not seeing this. You're just not seeing that part of your character or your relationship. If it's a good friend, you can take it. You may not want to hear it, but you'll take it. And isn't that terribly important? That someone reveals to you something that you're somewhat blind to. Now, that's a good friend. He's not taking advantage of you, but he cares for you, or she cares for you, right? And it's very insightful. 5, he points out the path to heaven. In 4 ways, young householder, should one who sympathizes be understood as a warm-hearted friend. She does not rejoice in one's misfortune. She rejoices in one's prosperity. She restrains others speaking ill of oneself. She praises those who speak well of oneself. So loyalty. Loyalty is an interesting one, isn't it? When someone disparages your friend and you just listen, by listening to that, you become complicit in their perception. And sometimes we do that because it just surprises you and you don't say anything. And yet, if you're hearing someone put down someone you know, and you say, well, that might be your perception. That's not my perception. I haven't seen that. I don't find that to be the truth I have with this person. That's loyalty. And it takes action. It takes courage sometimes. No? And I know for myself, I've sometimes, I've listened to someone saying something about someone I know, and I haven't had the quickness of mind to say, wait, what did you just say? What was that? And later on, I really regret it, because in my silence, I have somehow been complicit in that perception. And sometimes there isn't the quickness of mind. But the whole issue of loyalty is an interesting one in friendships, isn't it? A very interesting one. So that is one that one can go over every week for the rest of one's life, and the whole sutta is. Someone will look it up for you. Sigalovada Sutta it's the Digha Nikaya. But one of the reasons I talk about this is because sometimes in Buddhism we think that metta bhavana, the practices of loving kindness, are like always never challenging, I suppose. Never challenging someone that you're always nice. Always being nice about everything all the time. But that's a kind of doormat philosophy. The idea that metta bhavana is something that, I'll always be nice even if you wipe your feet on my face. Thank you very much. May you be well and happy. But it's not. And sometimes there's a necessity to say, no, that's wrong. That's immoral. That's you shouldn't say that. That's my friend. Loyalty or morality. And that is actually, that can be said with strength. Like Luang Por, he had a great love of all of us, but if we were foolish, he told us, no uncertain terms, that's a dumb thing to do. Don't do that. And that was a kind of kindness which came from strength. But sometimes I think that metta bhavana gets mixed up with fear. That the reason we don't say to people, that's wrong, that's incorrect behavior, is because we're afraid to say something. And then fear begets fear, doesn't it? Like if I'm afraid to say something, not confrontational, but truth, honesty, in time and place. If I am not speaking, if I'm not speaking because of fear, then am I not creating more fear in the future in all those kinds of situations? Because each iteration of acting on fear creates the causes for more fear in the future. So right speech isn't always pleasant. Right speech isn't always easy, as you must know in corporate world or whatever. Sometimes you have no power. You can't say things straight. So the more I think we look at, like in our social situations, at the feelings of fear or arrogance or dominance, we look at that relationship to others and then realize that I can feel loving kindness for someone, but I can't always. It's not so easy. But I have a lot, say as a senior monk, I've had to admonish and say you can't do that. And lots of times I haven't done it out of fear. And then lots of times I've done it out of anger and frustration. And all of those, of course, gave bad results. But that's developing the path. That's cooking the egg, overcooking, undercooking, and dropping it on the floor. And that's the way you learned. So in developing the path around friendship and right speech, I think that's very difficult. Don't you think? Marriage must be difficult. I wouldn't know. I did monk. My brother did marriage, so I'd have to ask him. But in terms of right speech isn't habitual. Right speech is considered, and where right speech comes very powerful is when we go beyond our fears. Because when you liberate the mind from fear, then your interaction has no agenda in it. There's nothing you want from this situation because there's no fear. That's why Ajahn Chah was such a powerful teacher, because he was fearless. And in Thailand, you have this word, Grengchai Mu. Look up Mu, right? Because Mu, if you get the wrong tone, Grengchai means kind of afraid. And Mu has two tones. Mu can mean group, or Mu can mean pig. So if there's any ties here, what I mean is group. So Grengchai Mu means that I'm afraid of the group. I might have said I'm afraid of the pig. I'm not afraid of the pig. Grengchai Mu means that sense of, I don't want to say this to the group because they might be upset. I want the group to like me. Ajahn Chah had none of that. He was totally fearless. So he could give us a Dharma talk for 4 hours, and all of us said, will you please stop? Enough of your Dharma. It's like you think, oh, Ajahn Chah, 4-hour discourse, it must have been wonderful. It was horrible. My knees were hurting. It was hot. The mosquitoes were biting. I couldn't understand the language. And just goes on and on and on and on and on. And you knew after a while, okay, he's testing us. And then he'd kind of pause, finally. And then he'd start again. And you kind of, oh, be quiet, I had enough. And I've said the story so many times. You always laugh, don't you? He was fearless. And he was one of, like a lot of monks, like, I don't do that. I'm Grengchai Mu. Not just the pig, but the people. I think they won't like me. It takes a very courageous man to do that. But in human relationships, you can see if we aren't communicating, if we're communicating from fear, that's going to mess up my mind and their mind too. So how do you do that? Well, first and foremost, you make conscious the fact that in this human relationship, the communication comes up from a fearful place. There is fear. So you make conscious fear, what fear feels like. The other would be dominance and manipulativeness and those kind of things. So I talk with you in order to dominate you, to get what I want, to manipulate you. That's a total lack of loving kindness, isn't it? total lack of loving kindness. So the more one is doing Lompa Sameto's practice, it's like this. In the morning practice, then when you're talking with your spouse, your partner, your kids, or whatever, what's the tone of the mind that is generating the speech? And look at the result. When I spoke, like the classic one is that you feel very judgmental towards someone close to you, usually because you can get away with it, and then you carry that judgment around. And they shouldn't be like that. They shouldn't be like that. They should be different. They should be different. They shouldn't be like that. And that's running through your mind. And then you know you shouldn't say anything. You said it 100 times and you say it. And they say, well, actually, you misunderstood me. You feel horrible. You feel regret. You're afraid. It's a mess, right? So whenever your mind is creating a strong sense of self and other, noble silence. Wait, for goodness sake, wait, because that's where the disasters happen, which doesn't mean you can't say something. But once you've endured the verbiage of self, that I making, mind making, they shouldn't be like this, I have to say this. And you begin to really practice the reactive speech that we have, just the blurt that we come up with, just the habit of cynicism or sarcasm or criticism, just that habitual speech. It's very hard to practice. We do a lot of bad egg boiling on speech. But if you look at the result of confusion in relationship, of misunderstanding, of fearfulness afterwards, you see, this is really noble work. Right? Speech is very, very noble work. It's hard to do. And then you start to pause on the reactivity. You just say, no, this feels like this. And you go to the mood of the mind. I was interesting. I just listened to a very interesting interview with Dr. Jill Bolte Taylor, who had that fantastic TED Talk many years ago on My Stroke of Insight. She's a neuroscientist and a brilliant woman. And she had a stroke and she lost the use of the left side of her brain. And she was in total bliss, total not self, undifferentiated consciousness bliss. And over 8 years, a brilliant woman, she retrained the left side of her brain to bring back the intellectual function, the analytical function. And now she's written another book called Whole Brain Living. And in that she describes how the right brain and the left brain work. And it's interesting how what she's saying is the same as Buddhism. It's, if you bring awareness to these moods of mind that we have, she said that as a neuroscientist, they've seen that these, like, let's say if we're talking about judgment, you have a very habit of being very judgmental of yourself and others. These instances of judgment last 90 seconds, she said. Never heard this before. It's just one cycle, 90 seconds, but then because of habit, you get back into it and you recycle it and it becomes very, very habitual. So I thought, okay, just like, what if you use that? When the first judgment comes up, just say to yourself, 90 seconds. Just wait 90 seconds. Don't say anything. See if it comes up again. And then it comes up again, habit. Oh, this is the habit of judgment, 90 seconds. And so what she said is what you do is you engage that part of your mind, the judging mind. You say, yeah, I know it's a problem, but we'll be okay. We'll get through this. So she engages these different parts of her mind. It's a really interesting interview she does with that. But her conclusion is the same as the Buddhist conclusion, that there is a part of consciousness that is undifferentiated and is like kind of one with the universe, that kind of language, if you wanted to use the languages, and it's full of love and joy. And the access to that part is gratitude. Is gratitude. And that's so much what the Buddha was teaching. So I found that very inspiring that here's a neuroscientist who now understands the molecular nature of the whole brain function, and she comes to the same conclusion that there is this possibility of transcendent knowing in the human experience from a completely different angle. Very fascinating. So when we make conscious in the present moment the habits of mind which are propelling speech, that's what you want to look at. What is this habit? This habit of judgment or resentment or self-disparagement, and to just see that is just the habit of mind, and that's not your real home. And not to get sucked into the wrong speech that comes from those habits of mind, because wrong speech is very hard to correct, isn't it? Once it's out there, you can't take it back. And you think about all of us in the human relationships we've had where we've got caught by the delusion of the mind, and then we've said like unkind and kind of things just off the top of our head, and then we have to live with the regret and remorse, and then we break down trust, don't we? That someone who is loyal to us all of a sudden gets hurt by our speech. Their trust is eroded. So it takes a lot to build a good friendship. And forgiveness is important too, isn't it? Forgiveness that, yeah, okay, Viradhammo blew at that time, but actually, on the whole, he's not a bad chap. So we'll give him another chance. Do it 10 times, and yeah, he seems to be all right, but I think I'll go to another monastery. Thank you very much. Right? Because there's only a certain amount of wrong speech we can take from people because we're human beings. This is the way it works. So in terms of cooking, we cook food and we make mistakes, but we develop a path of confidence to creating a beautiful meal for people. In the same way, the Noble Eightfold Path, right speech and friendship, we do it. And after a while, we have this confidence. And what is it that we're presenting to people? Beautiful humanity. That's what we're doing. The beauty of the human heart and the human soul in a very real way. And that's not mysterious. When we talk about transcendence and nibbana, that can, the unconditioned, I like that language. But an ancient city is something that you have to go through the forest, the jungle. You have to make your way. You have to cut through the brush, get bitten by ants, mosquitoes, and the coyotes might be chasing you every now and then. And it's a tough path too, isn't it? It's a tough path. But really, what else is there to do? But to do, goodness is something we do, isn't it? It's a doing, always a doing. And yet there's parts of us which are undeveloped, parts of our hearts which are maybe cruel or divisive, and that's just part of the purification of heart, where we keep doing the right thing. And very indicative of speech. Speech really shows where we're coming from. And when speech is right, there's no residue. When you speak your truth in a very, very good and wholesome way, there is no residue of regret or remorse or all of that. And socially, there's a lot of goodness and trust that goes on. So have a look at the Sigalovada Sutta. There's a lot more in it. And these suttas are you don't have to look at them all, but if you take that one and look at it again and again and contemplate bits of it, then you'll find that those bits of the sutta will come up in your own consciousness. You'll remember, oh yeah, and that will remind you of where you're at and where you're coming from and what you're doing in your own way. Okay, I'll leave that for your reflection then, Shunzian.
Thank you so much, Luang Por. Let's all say 3 sadhus together. Andamayam ovadagata sadhu karang kadama se sadhu 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 anumodami.
Happy Christmas. No, that's not Christmas. We're going to, okay, yes, I forgot about this, Beta. Yes. So now, for those of you who don't know, on the screen we have Parita Chanting, and this is the traditional chanting that the monastic community would do in all kinds of occasions, blessing of a marriage or wishing someone well in their birthday, or if someone was ill, we would chant blessing chants. So, Shunxiang, would you like to make the formal request?
Yes, Luang Por.
Right.
Vipatipatipahaya sabba sampati sitiya sabba dukkha vinasaya paritam brutamangalang Vipatipatipahaya sabba sampati sitiya Sababaya vinasaya paritam brutamangalang Vipatipatipahaya sabba sampati sitiya sabba roga vinasaya paritam brutamangalang
Namo
Tassa
tassa
bhagavato
arahato
samma
sambuddhassa.
namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Buddhang saranang
Gacchami dhammang saranang gacchami sanghang saranang gacchami tatiyampi buddhang
saranang gacchami dutiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami dutiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami tatiyampi buddhang saranang
Gacchami tatiyampi dhammang
saranang
gacchami tatiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Metan ca
Balokasming manasam bhavaye aparimanang buddhang adochatiriyan cha asampadang averang asapatam titan charang nisinno asayano vayavata Savigatamito etam sating aditaya brahma etam viharang idam ahuditin chanupagam sila vadasanena sampano kame suvinaya getam nahi jatu gapaseyam punareti
Dukkha
Chani dukkha paya pata chani paya soka pata chani soka hontu sabe pipani no
Etavata cha amhehi sampatam punya sampadang sape devan Odantu sabba sampati siddhya tanam dadantu sadaya silang rakantu sabada bhavana pirata hontu gajantu devata gata sabbe buddha balapata pacekanam Jayangata Parihantanan Jate Jenarakam Vandami Sabaso Jayanto Bodhiyamule Sakyanang Nandivadano Ewang Tawang Vichayo Hijaya Sujaya Mangale Aparajita Balang Kesi Se Patavipokare Abhiseke Sababodana Agapato Pamodati Sunakatam Sumangalang Supapatang Suhotitang Sukarno Sumuhoto Jasuyitang Brahmachari Supadakinam Kaya Kamang Vacha Kama Padakina Mano Kamang Panitite Padakina Nikatawana Labam Tate Padakine Bhavatu sabba mangalang rakantu sabba devata sabba buddha nupavena sada suti bhavantu te bhavatu sabba mangalang rakantu sabba devata sabba dhamma nupavena sada suti bhavantu te bhavatu sabba mangalang rakantu sabba devata sabba sanghanu bhavena sada suti bhavantu te.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
All right, nice to be with you.
Thank you so much, Luang Por. And on behalf of the lay community, we thank you for leading us in this very beautiful Papa ceremony, a bit virtually and thousands of kilometers apart. But to receive the blessings that we all share today, and gratefulness and thankfulness for your guidance throughout the whole pandemic situation. It is with our earnest sincerity that we offer our deepest and greatest wishes for well-being, to good health, to you, Luang Por, to all the Sangha at Tisarana, and to all the lay supporters as well. And during these difficult times, may you please keep well till we next be able to put our forehead to the ground, Luang Por. Please know that our love and respect and gratitude to you will always remain.
Thank you, much appreciated. So I'll sign off, everyone, and Bita will continue the party.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye, everyone. See you next time.
So thank you one and all for joining us in this session of Papa. I know it's a bit of awkward moment when we're doing all this in virtually, but I hope that your hearts has been touched and moved by the significance and the symbolism of Papa. As we come close to the end of Vasa, our monks who have cultivated for 3 months, and if you wish to support Tisarana Monastery as part of the Katina, which is happening at the end of this month on the 31st of October, I invite you to please do so via cash donations directly by bank transfer to the account that you see right here, or via wise transfers for any one of you wherever that you are, or to any of through the banks. Okay. If you're based in Singapore, we're happy to help with collections of private cash dana. At the same time, a group of us as good friends, we are delivering a box of requisites via DHL on the 17th of October to Tisarana Monastery and to arrive in time for Katina. In this box, we hope to contain some ropes, some requisites, and as well as any good wishes and cards that anyone would like to share with Luang Por Viradhammo and the monks in Tisarana. Please feel free to reach out to myself. My number and my email address is there. And we'll collect all this by the 17th of October by 12 noon. So if there is anyone who wish to inquire, please feel free to reach out to me. So with that, I wish all of you well, healthy, and be in good spirit, and let the Dharma guide you along and be your refuge. So Anumodana and sadhu to everyone.